My name's Beth. I'm an addict.
Hi, Beth.
I've got to stop drinking that chamomile tea. I keep falling asleep in meetings because I'm bringing that with me everywhere. So thank you for asking me to share, Tony. And yeah, I'm going to do the experience, strength and hope thing. And this has always been true for me, no matter like where I'm at in my recovery, and as the years go by, it's sort of how I see things. It just changes over time, and I think it's quite a reflective time when you're coming up to a birthday. And I go running outside, I go running off road, and I was running on the beach today, and I was thinking, I'll be 27 years tomorrow, and I come into recovery when I was 28. And when I was 27, that was like the year before I got sober, right? And I was thinking about where was I when I was 27? Because I don't think about that sort of stuff anymore. It sort of haunts you when you first come in, doesn't it? Like the dark days of your using, and it's sort of like you have lots of dreams about it, and it just seems to sort of like follow you around like a shadow, you know, depending on your using. But I'm sure that even if it wasn't like nasty, streety using that you did, like the emotional stuff, the ruin that people cause their family, all that sort of stuff, it sort of sticks with you, right? And, you know, the first sort of 5, 6, 7 years of my recovery, I would have really vivid, like, memories come along, or I'd go to Bristol and I'd drive around Bristol and I'd think, fucking hell, you know, but that sort of stuff, it doesn't come more. I think more now. I reflect more. You know, my mum died. My stepfather died first when I was about 10 years clean and sober. My mum died about 10 years ago, and my real dad died about 7 years ago. And I used drugs, and not recreational drugs with them. You know, I freebase cocaine with all three of them. And I remember on my first step 4, I had a resentment with my real dad because he came into my showman's caravan at Glastonbury Festival in 1990, and I was chasing heroin in the caravan, thinking I was really hard because you're not, like, travellers aren't meant to do heroin, like, it's just not a thing. No one sells heroin, and if you sell coke, you keep it really, really quiet. It's like undercover. It was just not done. And because everyone knows my family, I was just fucking proper taking the piss, like, I will do what I want. And bearing in mind, a lot of people in the 80s come to live on traveller sites to get away from heroin. Like, there were people that had been grown up in inner cities and they wanted to be on the peace convoy and they wanted to be away from heroin, and they did their detoxes, and they come and joined us, you know, and did free parties and all that sort of stuff. And they were free, they were clean from heroin, and they were doing E's and smoking weed and selling drugs, but they weren't heroin addicts anymore, right? So it was just taboo. It was just a not done thing. And I remember someone saying to me, coming in and going, "Oh, your dad's here." And I was like, "Which dad?" Because they all knew my stepdad as well. And they were like, "Oh, Mick, he's really cool, isn't it?" And I just remember thinking, ugh, he's not really fucking cool. He's such a fucking prick, yeah? And it was in my first step 4. So when he come onto the caravan, onto the showman's, because I had like top field showman's, like big in the game traveller, he parked up just a little bit away along, and he come on, and I remember chasing gear, and I knew that he'd had a heroin habit years before when he was with my mum. And what I wanted was for him to show some fucking concern. It wouldn't have stopped me fucking using heroin, let's face it, but like that was on my first step 4. Like, I was livid that he just didn't say, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, are you okay?" and show me this concern, right? And that was on my first step 4. And he died like 7 years ago. And the funny thing is, I found out lots more things. Not my stepdad, because he was really fucking cool. I could freebase cocaine with my stepdad. And we had a little bit of, a couple of times we had a tiny bit of gear after. He's not into gear, but just to take the edge off, you know, when you stop smoking. But he could literally smoke freebase cocaine like a gentleman. That is what he did. He never sold cocaine. My uncle was the big cocaine dealer. We would have a little session, and my stepdad would be like, "Okay, we're going. It's finished. I've got work." Yeah, because he worked on a farm. He was like a big estate farm manager because he'd learned all those skills on the commune that we lived on when I was a kid, on this peace commune. The first time that happened, and he was like, we're going home, and my lift was with him, away from my uncle and piles of cocaine. I was in bits, like internally, I was broken. And the weird thing is, I didn't really enjoy smoking the freebase. I didn't enjoy it. I was in a room with a load of guys. My mum and her mate were next door getting fucking pissed and would come in and be like, oh, is that a teapot? Oh, I've never smoked cocaine out of a teapot. My mum used to speak like this. I've never smoked. I don't know why. She was like more posh the more drunk she got. I've never smoked cocaine out of a teapot before. You know, like that sort of stuff. And and then my dad would be like, right, we're going now. He would, my stepdad, and I just never got it. And I believe that all the years that followed that, number one, I didn't really like freebase. I never really liked crack. I always really smoked against my will. I love heroin. I love the fact that it just shuts everything out, and I really couldn't give any fucks about what anyone thinks. And it was just my thing. But I'm grateful to crack cocaine because it broke my soul. It completely broke me as a human being, you know? And I am eternally grateful. There's an old traveller guy I used to live on traveller sites with, and he lives up by Gillingham, and he's older than me because I remember taking heroin to the fucking traveller site from London and selling him some when he was clean. He's still got a habit now. He just smokes it. He's vegetarian. He just smokes heroin. He looks fit as a flea. Lives on the, and there are people that can just carry on like that, but my mind, just doesn't operate in the same way as these people. And I tried all the different things, like it says in the book, in the big book, to try and find this magic formula. I didn't have my family weren't going to give me money, but I was a grafter. I was a born grafter. It's like I always knew I would have to make my own way in life. It was made very clear to me from the start. And I'm one of 7 siblings, and there's only me and my younger brother that were like, right, we're going to do that. We want to be like our uncle. Yeah, we want to be like, because he seemed like so fucking powerful and impressive. And all of the hippies and the peace-loving people that didn't have a pot to piss in, but had this contentment and meditated every day, I just thought that looked dull as fucking ditch water. Do you know what I mean? And I most definitely didn't want to be someone's missus banging out kids and fucking, waiting for them while they was in prison. It's just like, no, it's all right. I'll just do what they're doing over there. And when I first sort of did that first step forward, obviously it was like a lot of my resentments I see now were just like a kid's resentments. They were just like really immature, really, really childish. And it's taken me, it hasn't taken me, the steps have taken me on this beautiful journey where I think the first time that I went through the steps, I really wanted to believe I'd forgiven my family. And, I can't even, it was beautiful, my upbringing. I had so much fucking freedom. I got to totally define who I wanted to be. I didn't have to go to school. We totally didn't believe in the system. I was sharing the other night at a meeting I go to regularly, people talk about dysfunctional families. I don't think my family were dysfunctional. They were unorthodox. It was completely oversharing. Everyone knew everything about everyone. Everyone was constantly processing, sometimes off their head, sometimes in satsang, which is like a meeting where you talk about your experience in meditation in the morning. It was like they were really trying something beautiful, and I really respect my parents for that. But there was also massive inconsistency. And I think that where I was really resentful about the fact you wouldn't know what was happening from one day to the next. One of my earliest memories is when we were living in squats before we lived on the commune, is the police coming in and just taking my dad away. And as a 2-year-old, it's I remember that vividly. I remember the day I went into the kitchen to my mum and went, what was that? Why did that happen? Do you know what I mean? When you're starting to process these really vivid memories. And I was really pissed off about that. When I did go to school, I would go to other people's houses, and I remember I stayed at this girl's house once, overnight, on a school night, and not only did she have frozen fish fingers and fucking cornflakes, and we were brought up fucking vegetarian and shit like that, her mum brought her a cup of tea in bed to get her up for school. I was just like, fucking hell. It was like, how do I get adopted by this family? Do you know what I mean? It was like, I had never experienced anything like that in my life. It was just like, what the fuck? You know, like when the whole of your world just opened, you have this expansion of consciousness of like, fucking hell. Is that what happens? Really? So all of my initial resentments were all, you know, just really fucking petty and childish. And there was some, you know, shit that went down that shouldn't have gone down. But ultimately, because I found recovery and because of the relationship that I've got with a higher power, all of those things that could have ruined me as a woman actually did make me stronger. I was very, very fortunate. I was just fucking really resilient. And I've been able to bring that resilience with me into recovery. And I thought the first time I went through the steps, I thought I'd forgiven my parents, and it's just not true. The first time I went through the steps, I thought I'd forgiven myself for leaving my daughter with two young junkies at the house which I'd cuckooed. I didn't know what cuckooing was then, because it was like fucking 1997. That didn't exist as a word. But I took over their home, sold drugs from their house. They were really young, had a habit, out of their depth, beautiful flat they lived in. And there was a drought on, so I left my daughter with them and a load of people from Wales that had come to buy gear off me. And I just disappeared, and I was smoking crack, waiting for the heroin to turn up. And I was gone for I just lost track of time. And I went back with the drugs for the people left, and my daughter had gone. They just didn't know what to do. They were like two young kids. Do you know what I mean? They phoned up social services. Oh my God. I absolutely did not have the ability to see my part in that at all. You know, it was like absolutely not my fault. I marched up to someone's house that had loads of crack, and I remember crying, looking out over from Barton Hill tower blocks to all the lights in Bristol. And I said, my daughter could be anywhere out there. I didn't make one attempt to phone up social services or to find out who had picked my daughter up or where she was. Not a single attempt. I just completely made myself the victim in that scenario, and it was 100% the government's fault and that pair of posh pricks grassing me up. Yeah. It's taken me years to forgive myself for that stuff. I still have to really check myself, you know, and I'm so grateful for how very broken I was when I come here, because when I was 27, that summer was the summer that my daughter got taken off me, and fortunately social services met my mum and they said no, but they met my mother-in-law, and she was allowed to go and live with my mother-in-law in Hackney, and she was like a beautiful, peaceful woman, and she really, really, really looked after my daughter. Yeah, really looked after my daughter. She's 90 odd now. My daughter's going to get married at Hackney Registry Office next year so that she can come, you know, and all these little blessings that came along, because I wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't ready to stop using. My daughter was gone and I wasn't ready to leave. And my then husband had already left Bristol. He'd been nicked so many times that he had to be on like house arrest at his dad's house, and his dad had no comprehension of what I was doing, so he just took Chris away, and I was there serving up. And then Rosie went, and I had made a decision, and I told Chris like 6 years before. He kept fucking off and smoking crack and disappearing for days, and leaving me with my baby when she was first born. And by willpower alone, I didn't smoke crack. And one day he turned his phone on for 3 days. I had plenty of gear in the house. I was selling crack and not smoking it. That's how much fucking willpower I had. And he come in the house, and I went, I'm going out. I'll be back when I'm back. And I did not. I went up to the traveller site by the suspension bridge, and I didn't come back. I left him with my daughter for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I didn't stop smoking crack for one day for 6 years. And he shared back to me one time at a meeting when I shared at Monday night, and he goes, yeah, you were quite competitive with your drug use, Beth. and it's true. I'm like fiercely, you know, had to compete as a child. I was one of seven and around loads of kids, and it's true. I know everyone's like really quite offish about being competitive, but I am really fucking competitive. I'm really proud and really like, I will fucking show you. If it kills me, I will fucking show you what you've done. And that was like a lot of the narrative that was pushing me on to my death, because I had absolutely no plans to leave Bristol. In fact, it was quite convenient my daughter was gone. It was quite convenient for me at that time, and that's the truth. So how can I ever sit here and say I've fully forgiven myself? It's just not true. It's a journey. Bit by bit by bit by bit, I find a little bit more compassion for myself about who I was, and that's all right. I'm not going to sit here and promise you guys that haven't gone through the steps yet. Oh, you just go through the steps and, you know, you forgive yourself and other people forgive you and you know, and you'll feel forgiven by God. For me, it's not been like that. It's bit by bit, more of the truth about me has been revealed so that I can go into another, you know, stage of prayer and go on to a deeper level, you know, and that's why I always say that about clean time. It's like, abstinence is the best thing since fucking sliced bread. Yeah, I will, that, you know, it has saved my life. Abstinence was like eureka. I cannot have the first one. Fucking amen to that. I get that, and I fucking thank every single person that's been in a meeting up to this day for that. Yeah, I do. But there's so much more to it than abstinence, and for me, I did take it to the most extreme, because I'm an extreme individual, you know, I took it to the most extreme degree, you know, and I expect I could be quite difficult to be around in early recovery because I was just militant with myself. I didn't try to be militant with anyone else, but I tried to be really, really honest. As I get new experience, I tried to be really, really honest. I really, really grafted every day from the moment I made the decision to go through the 12 steps, because I surrendered to the process and not to God. I surrendered initially to a 12-step process rather than to a God that I just didn't have the bandwidth to comprehend. Drugs was my God, I knew that. I had surrendered fully to drugs, and that's what brought me to be willing to turn my life and my will over to the 12 steps. And when I first went through the steps, and I did 10, 11 and 12, I never ever have stopped since that day doing 10 and 11 and 12 on a daily basis. That's my truth. That's what I've done. Not a day has gone past. And the thing about clean time is it's so external. You know, I can be so external. I hate to say it because I wasn't brought up like that. I was brought up to look at what is in someone's heart, not what watch is on their wrist, not, you know, none of the people that I fell in love with it was about their looks or what, you know, I'm a heart person. That's not how I've been raised. Like materials, it doesn't really impress me. If I want material stuff, I'll go and get it myself, thanks very much. I'm not motivated by it. None of my family are. And I think there was a big phase in recovery where I had to get my shit together. I'd never had a job, and I wanted to give my daughter and my newborn son the consistency and the routine that I'd never had, because I knew that was the one thing that was missing from my childhood. And I fucking gave him that. And I also did it as a single parent, you know, and I'm sure people don't need to go to the extremes that I went, but, you know, I raised 2 kids. I did like a postgraduate, like equivalent of a master's qualification, raising 2 kids on my own, working full fucking time. And I still sponsored, and I still did fucking 3 meetings a week, and I still did service whenever applicable, not motivated for my self-seeking, or because I want, you know, acknowledgement from everyone, because I've got some sort of fucking position in CA. I did it because I know I will die of chronic selfishness and self-centeredness, because if you take the drugs away, if I'm doing my inventory and I'm doing my meditation, this is really loud. It's really loud because that bit goes down, but the voices and what's pulling me away, the selfish desires, I can see them for what they are, yeah, and I can get past it. And the truth is, the first 10 to 15 years, I was chasing my position, I was chasing my career, I wanted credentials, I wanted to prove myself as someone in the world, you know. And I also read The Relationship Ideal in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first time I read it, I was like, yeah, I was still married. And the second time, I had explicitly decided I was going to get to my relationship ideal. Like it was like a guarantee for everyone that reads the book that you will have this, like, this is part of the steps. Like, so just so you're, to save all of you a lot of pain, some of you might not ever meet a relationship ideal. Maybe you're not meant to be in a relationship. Maybe you're not meant to be married. Don't model yourself on some 1930s ideal of how your life is if it's a success. You know? Anyway, that's just me, you know, because it's like, I learned to be really good by myself first. You know, I learned to be really good by myself with God. And then I marshalled my will to get my relationship ideal. And then through many, many sort of failed attempts, you know, I've just sort of like surrendered it, you know, and it's all right, it's okay. It sort of like occurred to me one day, you've just been marching after this thing that you thought was promised to you. It's like, do you really want it that much? Well, no, because I'm bored of anyone after 2 years. Do you know what I mean? It's like, literally, I just like, fucking hell. Do you know, it's like, and I have to like really politely try and exit. You know, if that's my pattern, my sponsor helped me find that pattern a few years ago when I went through the steps. And I'm so honest that the last time someone showed an interest and started wanting to date me, I just said, yeah, but I have to let you know that my pattern is that I, like, after 2 years, I will be bored. So, and they were like, they dated me for a bit and then they just got completely freaked out and they were like, you're just going to break my heart. And I thought, oh, bless you. But I have to be honest, because that's what I was shown, you know. And if people judge me and stuff like that, that's their business. They don't know me. They don't know like what my values are, you know. But I just think, well, I'll finish on this. Yeah, another thing in the book that is a load of shite. This thing from the 1930s about, you know what, if you're married and you've had sex excursions, you know, maybe don't tell your wife, you know, because you don't want to upset her and harm other people. It's like, fuck right off. You know, the best and the worst thing my now ex-husband did was, bless him, before we'd even got back together and reconciled, we met at an NA convention at Beaufort Community Centre. I was pregnant with my second child. He hadn't gone through the steps. I don't think he'd even left treatment. And I was sat in the cafe bit at the NA Beaufort Road convention, and he went, I've got to tell you something. He said, I have slept with blah, 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 blah. And it was just like a fucking big long list of people I used to serve up to, sex workers that used to score off us. And I was just sat there, like, you know, at my lowest ebb, I'd put on 2 stone in weight. I was pregnant with my second child. And it was just like, but when we did decide to reconcile, I did know exactly what I was getting myself into. I had a much better idea of what I was committing to. So, you know, I'm not saying just run around confessing everything. I'm just saying really think about what your motives are, because it's just dishonesty. And our formula in this fellowship is honesty, because it gives us humility. And then when I've got humility enough, I will pray and I will put the action in and I will change. Because it's me that needs to change. If I'm not telling you the truth about something, it's because I don't want to change. And I want how you see me to change. And that's just bullshit. That means I remain exactly the same, with the same consciousness, the same fucking patterns of thought and mind that are going to take me back to using again. You know, that's why I emphasise that point, because it's a beautiful book and there's not much I would disagree with in there. But it was written by men, so, you know. There was some bias in the 1930s around that shit. So, yeah, I don't know really what I've shared, but I just want to say that, you know, the real hard work and the most important thing for me was to give my kids the security and break this cycle that was really entrenched in my family, and it wasn't a good cycle. You know, my mum died, she went back to drinking and she died suddenly, you know, never got recovery and all that sort of stuff. And I come from a pretty mental family, and that's just normal for them. And my kids fucking, they are sick, man. They are as in they are wicked. They're not sick. My daughter qualified as a chiropractor last year. Wow. She doesn't even remember me even smoking cigarettes. She does remember the police kicking the door off a few times when we lived in St Paul's. But I automatically knew what to do with my daughter. You know, I would just have her in my arms and I'd be like, oh, it's just so innocent. And I'd sit her on my knee when the police were searching the place and read her stories and be like, oh yeah, not look at Chris. So they took him away because he'd always leave the drugs out. And he's a fucking idiot. I always had my drugs fucking put away properly. He's a fucking fool. That's why I always got nicked. And my son is just like a walk-in fucking risk assessment. He will not take any risks whatsoever. My daughter's much more like me. But he's like really methodical. He's just exited a second relationship with a girl and we were talking about it and he was like, yeah, I just really don't feel like I was getting my needs met and I don't feel like she was able to like connect with me emotionally and have a moment. I was just like, who the fuck is this person on the end of the phone? He's graduated uni up in Manchester and he's just got himself a flat and he's living up there and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, where did he come from? I tell you where he come from. He come from every single morning. The first thing I would do was turn to God and get on my knees, do my meditation. And that's what my kids grew up with. The TV didn't go on. No devices went on. It was just peace and presence in my home. So they could always trust me and always come to God. I was so fucking consistent. Hardly ever raised my voice at my kids. If I shouted about something, the whole house would go, because it would have to be deep. My emotional nature was in check. And that's all because of these steps and the relationship I've got with God and that I put God first. You know, and sometimes that does look selfish when you have to put a lot of graft into the program, as I do, because I suffer in that way. I'm not telling you what to do. To thine own self be true. You get on with your program and follow your guidance and do what works for you. But it was made really clear to me what I needed to do, and I just fucking got on with it and did it, and that was it. So yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks.